So I don't support a constitutional convention. I support an Article V convention, and they're very different. When the framers of our Constitution were drafting the Constitution, they originally had an amending provision that only allowed Congress to propose the amendments. And then Representative Mason stood up and said, well, what if Congress is the problem? And they're like, duh, of course, yeah, this is not going to work. So we have to have another way to propose amendments to the Constitution. But none of them thought they were talking about what they all took for granted, which is the power of people to, quote, alter and abolish their Constitution independent of the Constitution. They weren't talking about that. They were just talking about creating a convention provision within Article V. And all that convention can do is propose amendments to the Constitution. It can just propose amendments to the Constitution. All right, so let's imagine a crazy amendment is proposed. You know, depending on whether you're on the right or the left, you can have your favorite crazy amendment. Abolish the Second Amendment or abolish, Roe versus Wade, whatever. What's the chance such an amendment would ever be ratified? Well, it takes 38 states to ratify an amendment. There are 27 double red states, meaning Republicans control both houses. There are 17 double blue states. Democrats control both houses. 13 houses could block any amendment. Now, if you're telling me that this amendment, crazy on the other side, couldn't get 13 of the 27 Republican states to block it, or 13 of the 17 Democratic states to block it, I don't think you've picked an extreme amendment. I think you've picked an amendment that actually is representing or speaking for a large number of the American public. So I agree that there's a conceptual fear here, and it would be a big fear if we were talking about creating a new constitutional convention, which would have the power to amend the Constitution without even sending it out to 38 states. But when you tell me that we're talking about a provision that requires 38 states to ratify it, even if I agree there's a tiny chance that there might be something bad that happens in that, I think there's a certainty that if we don't find a way to address the fundamental issues that we're talking about today, really bad things are going to happen. It's not a chance, it's a certainty. So I'm willing to take the 1 out of 10,000 risk that I think there is, that an amendment comes out that neither 27 Republican states or 17 Democratic states are able to stop, and it gets 38 states to ratify it. I'm willing to take that risk if it creates a sufficient political movement to get the kind of reform we need. Now, why do I believe it would do that? Well, every single important constitutional amendment in our history has come because of the threat of an Article V convention. The Bill of Rights came because of a threat of an Article V convention. And in the progressive era, the reason we got the Senate as being popularly elected as opposed to selected by the states is that we were within one state of having an Article V convention, right? So the Article V convention process has been a process to demonstrate to Washington we are serious. And the closer we get to getting 34 states, the more they will pay attention. And that is the big difference, I think, between this strategy and the Move to Amend strategy, which again, I think Move to Amend has done more than anybody to rally America to this cause. So God bless them for that. But anybody who believes that sending resolutions to Washington that says, please propose an amendment to the Constitution is going to have an effect, I think doesn't understand the way Washington works. Those get filed in circular file drawers in Washington when they are received. There is no legal effect from that. But the amendment, the Article V provision, every step towards 34 counts. And if the convention is genuinely cross-partisan, it would be significant. Now, here's the one final thing to say about this. I think the biggest problem with the Article V convention process right now is that nobody is recognizing that if it is perceived as partisan, it guarantees its own failure. Like I've been talking to conservatives, and they're like, no, we're going to get 34 states to call for an Article V convention so that we can have a balanced budget amendment or 7 other things that the Tea Party wants. And I say to them, look, if you succeed in getting 34 states to call a convention that will be characterized as a Tea Party convention, you're guaranteed to lose every one of the amendments you propose. It will never be passed. And it will be the biggest fundraising opportunity for the Democratic Party since the Iraq War. It would be a gift to the Democratic Party. So if you do that, you will fail. So you've got to think about how to structure this so it is understood by Americans not to be a putsch by one fraction of the political spectrum, but a genuine cross-partisan populist movement to find a different way to get suggestions for reform onto the tables for states to consider. And that ultimately is the state legislators' obligation. You know, our framers said, state legislators, people like Russell there, are the backstop of our government. We depend on them. When Congress is corrupt, they have to save us. That's their job. They have to step up and save us by giving us a chance to have a different amendment on the table than the ones Congress would propose. And I think we ought to try this idea that they proposed because I think it's the only thing to get their attention.